work session to order. I'd like to thank everyone for being here and wish everyone a happy new year. I hope everyone's year has started off on a more positive note than others. So at this time, I'd like to call on Dr. Watts to introduce our presentation this evening.
Thank you very much. Again, Happy New Year's, President Daniels, members of the board, Ms. Howley, staff, and to our special guest today. It was not long ago, less than a couple of weeks, that we were in a meeting together to support our stakeholders and certainly in support of this work and partnership between Kent School District and Kingmakers of Oakland, led by the inimitable Mr. Chris Chapman and Mr. Anthony Shoecraft. We are here to share a little more context into not just the what partnership between Kent School District and Kingmakers of Oakland entails, but most importantly, the why. And with us as special guest, we have Jeremiah, bro. We appreciate your presence. Your presence is a gift. And we thank you for being here to represent this work that takes place. So at this time, I will turn it over to our leaders from Kingmakers of Oakland, Chris and Anthony. Thank you so much and welcome again.
Thank all of you. I'm going to go ahead and allow Brother Anthony, if you would mind, maybe to do kind of center us and do a quick recap, and then I'll go ahead and I have a slide deck, some repetitive for some, for those of you who are with me. It was less than a month ago, and then some new pieces in the spirit of capturing the process that we hope to move forward with you all. But Brother Anthony, would you like to go ahead and kind of kick us off?
Yeah, not a problem at all. And I want to just maybe get a little bit of grace ahead of time, as such as the time with technology. If I turn into Mr. Robot Man and reception starts to make me get all distorted, just roll with me. It's just been one of them kind of days, and so I think I'm like in the sweet spot of a house, but something's been going on with our internet. But at any rate, it's an honor, it's a privilege, it's a blessing to be back with you all again. Many of you all know that I look at not only the Kent School District, but the Kent community as really is kind of a home base for me as a South King County kid. So every time we've been able to spend time with you all, I lean on that Kent is like home for me. One, as a former Kent resident, then also just a kid of South King County. But it's also just a cherished opportunity to continue to grow with you all in this work as you, as systems leaders, really have such an extraordinary responsibility to create a better future and reimagine a better and brighter future for your students. So today, as Dr. Watts mentioned, all we wanted to do was just continue what we've been building with you all as prospective partners to help you all achieve the goals you have for not only your students, but also the broader Kent community. Brother Chapman is gonna deliver the core presentation. Building off of last month's stakeholder engagement meeting, I did want to start off with a few reflections to kind of frame this today, because I think last week's meeting not sure how I got on. Oh, there we go. All right. All right. There we go. All right. But going back to the summertime when we had our initial board session, and then we had last month's stakeholder engagement meeting, and then going to today, the cadence has always been to sort of walk with you all to learn about Kent, learn about the vision, get a sense of the larger sense of collective leadership and collective genius you all have as we delve deeper into this equity work. And we really just want to sort of spend more time going into a little bit of the how of how we work with districts, but also just really have like a meaningful Q&A session, given that we've had 2 engagements. And I think this is the full complement of the board. Yeah, and I think this is the first time. So we were mindful about that reality. And if there were any remaining questions, given this is our sort of 3rd engagement with you all, we did want to just offer some time. If there are any remaining questions to clarify, we want to offer that time up. But let me start off just by sharing, my time at the city, my time with the Roadmap Project, my time doing work, at the county level, and even at the community level. There are rare moments where you're in the space of community and the sense of readiness, the spirit of enthusiasm is undeniable. And last month, the fact that this was, this took place virtually, I think is even more of a compliment. I just want to just say at a personal level, just well done to you first, Dr. Watts. Secondly, to you board directors for not only those who were able to attend, to be engaged, and then also part of the executive leadership. Look at my dear brother, Israel. And then also the community stakeholders that were there. There was just a spirit of support. There was just a spirit of curiosity. If it was a wonder of anyone that was on the call last month, none of the questions that were elevated made myself or Chris shudder in our boots, because we're big kids, and these are the kind of questions that should be asked, right? When you care enough about the work, any and all questions are fair, and in the spirit of our kings and of our children, they should be addressed openly. So from the critical questions, the insightful curiosity, but just the sort of wraparound enthusiasm for this work was an honor for me personally to see that again reflected. I look at our brother, Jeremiah, the king, to the parents I represented, some of the CBOs, to some of our elders, folks who really paved the way for many of you, right? I think about Miss Gwen, who's someone I've been blessed to know through this process. But it was around the table, the virtual table, I left with a deep sense of Kent has turned the corner, a next sort of stage of buy-in, readiness, and enthusiasm. Not to say that's perfect and tomorrow's going to be this new, but, sort of reality. But I certainly appreciated the sense of wraparound support, enthusiasm for what we hope is going to be a pretty fruitful partnership in working beside you all, alongside you all, and supporting you in realizing the goals that you really want for your African-American males, as well as the other males of color. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I won't delve into too much, but that was my sort of initial reflection from last month's meeting. I do want to say, Jeremiah, at some point, I do want to ask you for your virtual signature, brother, because I want to be the one that says I was there when that brother was just not even getting started, because you already arrived. But I need you to send me like a virtual signature, man, so I can just put up on my wall, because I think at some time in the future we all agree we all gonna be taking orders from you one of these days, brother. Brother Chris, I don't know if you wanted to offer any sense of your own reflections, just from last month's stakeholder engagement meeting before we begin. You're on mute, by the way.
Man, I think you hit it on the head. I'm blessed to be a part of the process. I do believe time is now. I see Kent, in the spirit of how we're in relationship with other districts, the fact that you all have already convened cross-functional, intergenerational and internal stakeholders engage in this struggle is you are leaders in the movement. And so it don't make it any easier, but I was inspired really by Jeremiah, the kings that were on the last voice. You have teachers, you have union members, you have board members, you have elders, you have past staff. So you have it, y'all. And so I'm just excited really just to be in community, to be someone on the outside, just to help facilitate and help support you all do the work. Because again, Kingmakers ain't coming in to do the work. It's you all. This is the beautiful struggle. And so we want to be good stewards. And we know that all of this will go at really the speed of trust. And this takes time. We are in extraordinary times. And so just grateful for the moment. And so really, without further ado, I want to go ahead and jump in and share my screen and get it going. So if I could share my screen, with you all. And let's see. And thumbs up if you guys can see the screen. Excellent. So again, this is our third convening together, y'all. It is an honor and really a privilege to be in community with you. This is our third time together, but a kind of our virtual board work session. Do realize some of you this will be repetitive, but for others this will be kind of time to hear a little bit about how we frame the work and then how we're teeing up the process that we'd like to be in community with you all moving forward in service of Kent being in its last and final year of its plan, a wonderful opportunity to really understand the landscape and execute a plan and moving forward in service of Black boys, but ultimately the entire system. So I will spend some time today talking about targeted universalism as a way to go deep around those students furthest from opportunity, but also as a way to ensure that each and every child graduates college, career, and community ready. So I'll spend a little bit more time around targeted universalism as a way. This is a strategy that doesn't ignore the whole, but it brings specific focus around a particular group. And so I'll go a little deeper than I had in the past around that. And so again, I'll just move forward a little bit in the spirit of our organization, Kingmakers of Oakland, who we are. Kingmakers of Oakland is a leadership development and systems change organization committed to fundamentally transforming the education system and building the capacity of people to design and sustain thriving and liberated systems, structures, conditions, and culture to improve educational life outcomes for Black students. Our core assumptions: our educational system was not created to educate all children equally and to high standards, and therefore results in inequity by design. The policies, practices, and cultural representations or ways of knowing and communicating what is normal, right, and valued in schools advantages some groups of students and disadvantages others. We believe educational transformation is possible. Making progress on equity requires us to have honest conversations about race and systemic oppression, not to lay blame, but to design more equitable systems. So it's not in our spirit to call folks out. We want to embrace, as we all as board members in service to a community, we want to create the place and space where everyone sees themselves as agents and leaders in this movement, and that takes time. And so we spend a lot of time in the spirit of working with districts and our partners around building trust and improving how we communicate with each other and accept where we're at in the spirit of we're all on our equity journey as we reimagine a system in service of all as well. So I'll start off really with the first paragraph, and I'll just kind of call on folks just to help me help lay some context to this extraordinary brave space. And this piece by Mickey Scott Bay Jones starts off: together we will create brave space because there's no such thing as safe space. Dr. Watts, would you read the next paragraph, please?
Yes, we exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere.
Excellent. Director Hamada, would you mind reading the next paragraph, please?
We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know.
And Jeremiah, would you mind reading the last paragraph, please?
No problem. Together we will create we will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our necessary space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Ashe. Thank you. Next powerful piece that just in the context of where we're at today by Arundhati Roy. Pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. And this is the opportunity that we have to rewrite a new vision at the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what we will be, the journey we'll be embarking on the next several months. And so this next piece, as opposed to reading, I actually wanted to, and I want to thank Brother Anthony for teeing up this video to give a little bit more texture and context to what targeted universalism kind of looks like, sounds like. And so I'm going to share another video with you all to give some context to targeted universalism. So let me share screen again. And
what is the most effective and sustainable policy response to problems in our society? Universal approaches are widely used in order to package policies for broad appeal. Universal policies such as Social Security and minimum wage laws provide the same benefits or minimum protections to everyone, regardless of status or group membership. But by treating everyone the same, universal approaches can't root out group-based discrimination and may actually deepen inequality between groups rather than reduce it. And by providing benefits or protections to everyone, resources that could be targeted to groups worse off instead flow to those who are better off. In contrast to universalism, targeted approaches are commonly used. Targeted policies provide benefits or protections based on group membership or status. SNAP, the food stamp program, conditions benefits on income level. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires public accessibility for disabled groups, and affirmative action focuses on historically disadvantaged groups. Targeted approaches are vulnerable to the critique that they unfairly favor constituent groups over the public good by directing resources to marginalized groups who are already subjected to unfair stereotypes. But universal and targeted approaches are false choices. There is a third way: targeted universalism. Targeted universalism means setting universal goals that can be achieved through targeted approaches. This approach targets the varying needs of each group while reminding us that we are all part of the same social fabric. This can be accomplished by following these 5 steps. First, set a universal goal. For example, 100% proficiency in 8th grade math. Second, measure how the overall population fares relative to the universal goal. In this example, we might discover that only 80% of 8th graders are proficient in 8th grade math. Third, measure the performance of population segments relative to the universal goal. So although 80% of all 8th graders are proficient, we might find that only 70% of Latinos are proficient. Fourth, understand how structures and other factors support or impede groups' progress toward the universal goal. For our Latino students, classroom instruction materials and lessons designed for English speakers may impede learning, including math proficiency. Finally, implement targeted strategies so that each group can achieve the universal goal based upon their needs and circumstances. This may take the form of ESL-specific math tutoring for our Latino students, while another group may require a completely different strategy to achieve the same universal goal. Targeted universalism rejects a blanket universal, which may be indifferent to the reality that different groups are situated differently relative to the institutions and resources of society. By aspiring towards shared universal goals, targeted universalism empowers targeted strategies capable of achieving those goals while moving us beyond concerns over disparities alone and toward our highest aspirations for all.
let me stop sharing, whoops, and go back. Uh-oh, where's my deck? Let's see. Bear with me 1 second, y'all. I apologize. All right, there we go. Exit. Oh, here we go. So targeted universalism, the work of Kingmakers of Oakland, and the frame of healing the fish while transforming the school system or transforming the ecosystem, really is another way of restating or reframing targeted universalism. Is that we iterate and ideate based on those furthest from opportunity. Why? First of all, I should say we use data that points us to the direction of who's furthest from opportunity. Our focus tends to be African-American children in the spirit of our context. But African-American children, I also don't want to say are furthest from opportunity in every district. But that is why we would target on that subgroup. And so hopefully the video gave a little bit more context, that it doesn't mean that we're forgetting everybody else. It just means that we have to be very differentiated on how we then build that set of supports for Black children as a way then to support not just them, but inform the entire system. And so I'm going to go a little deeper in terms of what does that look like, or what that could look like. What that'll look like for Kent will be different than Oakland, will be different than San Francisco, from Seattle. But the process I'm going to go into is a liberatory design process, a little bit different than continuous improvement. And so I'm going to kind of move into that phase right now. And so one of the things that we would do, and again, I realize you all haven't approved our contract, but one of the things that we do is work with individuals within a district and work with the team, then to identify their glasses, right? And so there is not one set of glasses that one size fits all. Really, over the next several months, we're going to be putting on glasses, but we got to figure out, are we nearsighted, farsighted? You know, is it a little foggy over here? Is it clear over there? That is to acknowledge that each and every one of us are on our own journey of understanding systemic oppression, and racial equity. And so this process over the next several months would be one of which figuring out and identifying where are we at on our own internal equity journey, while simultaneously understanding where is Kent on their journey. So as we go through, and there's a series of activities and processes that we would go through, but ultimately the lens that we would be viewing this journey of personal transformation and systemic transformation would have us look at the individual, so self, right? A person's beliefs, our beliefs and actions that serve to perpetuate oppression, consciousness, unconsciousness, externalized versus internalized. Then there's the other aspect of the systemic work of institutional and structural. But then the kind of in the Venn diagram, where the opportunity is really us, the interaction between the Jeremiahs and the teachers and the board, the union and central office, the interactions between people both within and across difference. And so what I'd like to do now is, and I don't, do we have a chat? Is there a chat feature in this? I'd love for you all, just in the spirit of just getting a little engagement, but what connections you see between your work for equity and these levels of oppression? Where does your system tend to focus? No right or wrong answer, but would love for you as directors just to, at this point, share your response in the chat. And then I would ask Brother Anthony if you could kind of lift up some of those observations, responses. That would be great before we move forward.
Thank you, President Daniels. Brother Chris, she's lifting up that most of the focus is on the system instead of on self, when it's both.
That's right.
I'll shade to that for sure.
Remember, these systems outlive all extraordinary individuals, but a group of extraordinary individuals that are going through that sort of personal transformation can transform a system. So the work is both individual as well as the institutional and structural. But appreciate that comment.
Director Vengadasalam. Hi, by the way, it's been too long. And she says the ability to show our lived experiences and not just our learned ones. Yes, indeed. Director Hamada lifts up that we tend, or beyond the school walls, she's just been appointed to the first Equity, Social Justice, and Cultural Committee in the city of Kent. So expanding the work outside of the four walls of the school district, and on the Washington State level of affirmative action committee. So state level and local level engagement and involvement. So expanding the work outside of KSD. Thank you both, directors, for those latter 2 points.
Let's get one more, Brother Anthony, before we move forward.
We got Director Bettinger. Yes. Focus seems to often lose focus on the individual students. And so she says, hopefully the policy work can address this.
Yes, and congratulations, Director Amata, as well. That's awesome on so many different levels, and a great opportunity to leverage your leadership in the work in Kent and calibrate it both with the state and the city. So great timing on all of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all for feeding the chat and just getting some input based on kind of our personal work that we're going to need to do in the journey, as well as the systemic work that we'll be able to do over the next several months as well. So let me click out and go to the next slide. So equity, and let me move this over. A little differentiation between equality and equity. And I know many times we see that one ballpark picture of the kids looking through the fence or looking over the fence. This is another way of kind of approaching a differentiation between equality and equity. One way to think about equity, equity is the state that would be achieved if success was no longer predictable by any social, cultural, or economic factor, even as we navigate this extended moment of the pandemic. And equity is not just an outcome, it is also a liberating process. So it's a kind of a noun and a verb. So phase one, this would be the process that we would work with this group, the group with the union, the teachers group, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Watts, you all have your committees set. And so the groups that we would be working, Kingmakers would be working with those identified groups, the equity group, the union group, the board, around this liberatory design process over the next few months. So this is what I would want to share kind of as phase one. But I'll start off with this quote by Adrienne Marie Brown. There is such urgency in the multitude of crises we face. It can make it hard to remember that, in fact, it is urgency thinking that got us to this point, and that our potential success lies in doing deep, slow, intentional work. The liberatory design process, equity leader as design host. We are all equity leaders. And so this process of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, always noticing and reflecting. That's every day. We should be noticing and reflecting it, personally, as well as within our departments and with our domains and within our institutions as well. But I'll kind of take us through a process that we facilitated in Oakland to give a little bit more texture on what that could look like for Kent. Oops. And my screen, oh, there we go. Oh. And 1 second, y'all, I went a little too, all right, here we go. So the first part would be, and so we have the board, the equity teams, the student, the union, and the community groups, right, that we've been meeting and kind of talking with thus far. In Oakland, one of the initial process was to identify these groups, which we have in Kent, but then align them to specific goals. And so one, we would need to identify, the goals could be identified already in the strategic plan. But what the goal teams really would be charged to do is looking at the data, reviewing best practices within Kent, participating in school visits, and these may be virtual, conducting interviews. So it's going to be very important, beginning a listening campaign from students to teachers, the union members, to glean where is the genius and the best practice, and then where are some of the pain points. That is going to be very important for us to figure out how we move forward in building trust, shared understanding, a cohesive and congruent language in terms of a shared language on how we develop the plan in moving forward. In these part of the initial phase is empathy and discovery. And so we would want to perform initial school site scans, listening to assessments of current reality of African-American males. And that's why it's so important that we have Jeremiah. And I know last time we had 3 kings, Mason, Jeremiah, and Solomon. But we're going to want to, over the course of the next several months, is continue to listen to the experiences of African-American male children. And if Kent is focusing on African-American children, boys and girls, listening to both boys and girls. But the goal is listening to the experiences of our children to help feed and fuel how we move forward, but also to build shared understanding on how our children are experiencing school, elementary, middle, high school, in particular in this distance learning space. We also want to initiate a listening campaign, as we did in Oakland, with principals, teachers, CBOs, school providers, and parents. This idea of building will. We have to build a movement beyond this board, beyond individual dynamic leaders to help accelerate how this is a movement that actually outlives any one individual or one department. And you do that by listening. And as we listen, we can then begin to engage folks into the movement so they can see themselves as part of the solution versus part of the problem. And that the listening will drive the ideation and the prototype process, which I'll go into a little bit later. The last piece that we did in Oakland and we facilitated in Seattle as well is conducting a listening campaign of African-American male students, K-12, as well as alumni around their experiences. And it would be tethered to what drives the questions are really around your core goals. And so we would generate those questions. We would initiate the listening campaign to understand how the experiences of our students, and that would be really the impetus that would fuel how we move forward in the ideation and prototyping process. The next part, once we've done the listening, is we'd established the goal teams, which we have, to conduct a review and an inventory of best practices, models, and research. So we know we have the work of Kingmakers of Oakland, but and I remember the last meeting, there was community partners, right, that are doing work in Kent. This is an opportunity for us, for Kent to understand who are the culture keepers, who are the other folks within the district, but also within the community that are actually doing good work in service of African-American children, be it in the classroom or be it in the community. The goal teams also would conduct interviews of key individuals implementing successful models. So what other models be it youth development or other academic intervention strategies that we could begin to calibrate and mobilize around a systemic approach to improving educational outcomes for Black children as well. And so we'd want to interview those partners as well. We would conduct a data analysis to understand the baseline data and identify progress benchmarks. And so we're going to need to understand, kind of as the video said, we have the universal goals, but now how are African-American children, what are their Lexile scores? What in terms of chronic absenteeism, in terms of graduation rates? So beginning to understand and establish baseline data. So as we begin to implement strategies from policy to the classroom, we would be able to develop and understand what the baseline is as we move forward. And then the last one is gathering best practice research and models to support African-American males. And there's a lot of extraordinary research that we could glean. And again, developing a learning community as a district around what are those best practices that we could begin to put into play. Again, acknowledging there's extraordinary things happening right in the Kent community. And sometimes that gets foreshadowed by some of the things that we aren't doing. And so it'll be important for us to look at the research, but also glean and lift up the culture keepers and best practices that are happening right in Kent as well. And so this process, as it developed the theory of change for us, we would implement a set of strategic activities for African-American male students to engage valuable student and community-centered efforts as a means of building the capacity of district and community leaders. We would apply the best of what we know to show that we can actually demonstrate progress and create conditions within the district so these strategies get replicated across the district through systems and structures. And so I just share this to say that sometimes we start with policy, but we have to remember that culture eats policy for breakfast. And so it's not just hitting it, it's not just changing policy. It is really a process, and this is the ecosystem, the ecology aspect of how do we begin to think about what are the drivers, what are the processes from the boardroom policy to the classroom that begin to change and address these things that in many times keep African-American children from excelling and thriving, as the video said as well. And so then we would move into the prototyping and piloting and scaling phase. And this is where we came up with the frame of healing the fish while treating the toxic ecosystem. And part of the toxicity, and I won't go too long in this one, but just acknowledging that the culture conditions many times prevent African-American children from thriving. The discipline policy. So if we audited referral forms, if we've audited and looked at the suspension policies or the referral rates to special education, do we understand and looking at and it says here in terms of the unequipped teachers, but understanding what teachers need now to engage, encourage, empower African-American children. And in engaging African-American children, we posit it actually benefits all children. Looking at curriculum fundamentally different, not just from ethnic studies, but how do we begin to rewrite curriculum in math, science, language arts, and history that elevates the cultural prosperity of Black, Brown, API children? That is a heavy lift. And that is a journey in and of itself, but beginning to evolve content and curriculum to lift up local history as well as the cultural identity and prosperity of African-American children. And then another piece that is really important, and a lot of times systems under or downplay, is the discrimination and criminalization from negative media portrayal. And so how do we begin to think about a new narrative in Kent that's lifting up the Jeremiahs and elevating their voice and versus what we see on television and or what we may hear on the radio, that we know that in working with districts' communication departments, that they actually can share a new narrative that actually is affirming, empowering, not just for African-American children, but the entire school system as well. So we work with districts around that as well. But that negative piece adds towards the toxic ecology. And what we do to address that, what we've talked a little bit about, is the policy advocacy, the hiring and training of teachers, the parent engagement piece, and the narrative. Those pieces, which don't happen overnight, but over time and sustained efforts, actually lead to cleansing and cleaning the toxic environment that lead to a thriving environment that leads to increased self-esteem, improved literacy, and increased graduation rates. The drivers that we work with districts on, it doesn't have to be the exact for Kent, but what we found in our 10 years of work in Oakland, that of the myriad of different things that we introduced into the system, the 6 that had the greatest impact on increasing the cohort graduation rate by 35% of African-American male children, by increasing the Black male teacher pipeline, all of these pretty amazing data points that kind of, definitely took time to do. But these were the 6 areas that we would work with you on around culturally relevant pedagogy, recruiting, training and retaining Black male teachers, elevating youth voice, which you all are already practicing, and increasing leadership, youth leadership, how we engage community and family engagement, the work around narrative change and policy. We believe these drivers, when sustained, actually address the toxic ecosystem that lead to not only accelerated academic performance for Black children, but for all children. And I could share the data that substantiates that. The one report by Tom Dees out of Stanford did a 10-year longitudinal study on our work to then show the spillover effect on targeted universalism was indeed actually not only did African-American male children thrive, all children benefited from these targeted sets of supports. And so if given the opportunity, we know we have a team that we would be working with in the initial stage for the first several months, the second semester, but the goal would be to build out a cross-functional intergenerational team that would actually begin to build out the strategies in those 6 drivers around the action steps, the plan, and students would see themselves as part of the leadership team, family members, teachers. And this is another way to move out of the traditional kind of positional authority that we hold as board members and senior leaders, but beginning to create a more equitable space where the Jeremiahs are sitting right alongside the Dr. Watts and co-designing and co-conspiring. And this is what we find in time leads to the sort of equitable outcomes that we want for all children by modeling something a little bit different through these cross-functional intergenerational teams working together around those 6 areas to develop the strategies and the plans necessary to get at the desired outcomes that we want for all. And so as I'm kind of in closing, leading for equity means taking responsibility for what matters to you, understanding your needs. And so we know that part of the work that we've been asked to think about, now we haven't entered into the agreement, but it was really kind of these 4 areas. And again, I'll just share this because I know hopefully you all will be voting on this in some point, would be around these 4 areas. And so I kind of shared the process. But learn and engage with kingmakers, healing the fish while treating the toxic ecosystem framework as a way to expand equity consciousness and shift from traditional leadership paradigms to a more dynamic approach to equity-focused problem solving and decision-making required for leading for equity in complex systems. And the answers and the remedy aren't linear processes. Complexity is very dynamic, and it all goes really at the speed of trust. And we offer a process to help facilitate building trust, being in shared space, to then to begin to ideate and prototype what are those strategies. So it's not just the board or it's not just senior leadership. 2, articulate a definition of success that is liberatory and inclusive of the values and aspirations of students of color and students in living in poverty and in their communities. 3, work together to identify or refine a priority equity challenge and design, apply, and reflect on approaches to advance progress toward equity. And 4, learn and apply a learning partnership approach to change, working collaboratively with colleagues and students to implement rapid cycles of inquiry, running small tests of change to learn what works, how it works, excuse me, for whom and under what conditions and why. Again, you all would be doing the work. We would just be facilitating these processes for you all to really help develop what would be the plan moving forward. And so in closing, to refuse to participate in the shaping of our future is to give up. Each of us must find our work and do it. Audre Lorde. and things are not getting worse, they're getting uncovered, as we saw today. We must hold each other tight and continue pulling back the veil. Adrienne Marie Brown. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for comments, questions, constructive criticisms. I had a couple, and we can use these prompts so we can just have an open Q&A. But, what ideas resonate with you in your lived experience, and in what ways did these ideas provoke your thinking about your system's approach, or what questions emerged for you? And so I did share the deck too with Dr. Watts and Brother Anthony. But at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we can just engage in a dialogue.
All right. Thank you. So this actually brings, my mind has been going since we last met, and I've been a fan of this work for a very long time. And I think about like what you talk about, and I love the whole, healing the fish while trying to, fix the pond, because that's exactly what we're doing. And I think oftentimes, I think we see the fish as the students, but understanding that the adults are really the fish, right? Because we're the ones who are actually perpetuating the cultures and conditions where, like you said, our students don't always do well. And so I wonder about, how, so can you talk to me a little bit about, so give me an example of like, what is something that you might do? I know you talked about training the teachers. Can you give me an example of something that might be, would it be a training that you guys would provide, like a curriculum or some type of training system, or is it something that we would, as a district, would need to kind of find and say, okay, so this is something that we're going to bring into our district in order to help to support our teachers and staff to help to move this work forward?
So we do offer specific services for professional development for teachers. Yet we haven't entered that level of specificity. So I think part of the scan is actually identifying within Kent, what are those best practices around professional learning that already are happening to help you all think about, it could be Kingmakers of Oakland, and I could go into that. We have a curriculum called KEPRA curriculum, and we have a PLC where we meet with teachers once a month, and we do virtual classroom observations. We're not there yet. So I think for us would be to help you all think about what sort of professional learning model for teachers works best for you all. It could be Kingmakers of Oakland, or it could be something that's already happening. And I think part of it, what I found in systems is many times, in particular, principals are kind of doing their own, so there's what central office may be offering, and then principals are kind of doing their own PD as well. So part of this, though, is doing that landscape analysis and understanding, well, what are all the PD we are doing for teachers, be it around math, be it around differentiated instruction, be it around literacy, be it around discipline. So and then seeing what is working and what's not, and you all looking at the data and the efficacy with students, with teachers, with that, I think the cross-functional team, and you all landing on, all right, this is the way that we want to approach professional learning for our teachers moving forward. And so we didn't enter into the specific agreement just yet around Kingmakers doing PD for teacher development. We could. That would be a slightly different conversation. But I think in this first phase is really helping you all think about what kind of PD that gets at this personal transformation, as well as calibrated to where the system wants to go. What does that PD look like, feel like, and sound like? And some of this, I would say, in your listening campaign, and I think this is the tension sometimes, the higher up we go, sometimes we may think we know what's best for our community, but yet just because it's now coming from the board or the chief academic officer, folks are going to be, a little suspect. So part of this next 6 months is listening, using constructiveness listening to build shared understanding. So when we come, it's building the kind of buy-in so you all would land on what, as a system, what would be the best way that you want to approach professional learning for your teachers. And so that doesn't specifically address what framework, but I think for right now, I don't necessarily know all the myriad of different kind of professional learning models you all are using, but we would we would survey, you all would survey, we would help facilitate, and then we would have the work sessions to see what's working, what's not working, and then how do we want to move forward, in particular around race, equity, and healing. What would be that PD, right? Because and maybe someone in this call can speak to, maybe is it Glenn Singleton? Are you all, what is the framework you all are using right now? Is it a one size fits all, or are elementary schools using a professional learning model around racial equity, or anti-racist, or abolitionist? There's many different models. But what I find in systems is we have too many, and one isn't connected with the other, and so it creates confusion. This is why we offer is listening to see what we are using as a way then to consolidate what are the best ones that actually we want to move forward and invest in. And if that's Kingmakers love, and if it's not, that's okay too. But this first phase one would be us working with you just to help identify what are all the models within your school, your school system around race, equity, and again, there's that you all are using, and what is the one that you in, and it could be a few, but does that help Director Daniels in the spirit of at least how to approach it now? I could prepare another presentation. I would bring on Brother Bayan Bakari if you're interested around how we do professional learning for our teachers, but that we hadn't necessarily got granular with Kent.
No, that helps me. I just wasn't, like I said, I was just really asking for clarity because I wasn't sure exactly what that part looked like. I also wonder, I think about the population of, let's say, even African-American males and African-American people who are engaged in Kent, right? And I think about what type of representation. So I think about, right? So I know one of the challenges as we've looked at implementing this work is, I know some people have felt like, do we have enough Black kids, or do we have enough to, you know what I mean? Or do we have to justify doing these things, right? And I think it's really important, the message that you say, you're right, what we do for the most marginalized will help everyone. And I think that's a message we really have to continue to resonate, because people are always going to say, why just the Black boys, or we don't have enough Black boys, or whatever that looks like. And I wonder, because I know Oakland's a much more diverse. I know there's a larger populations of African American, in the areas where I've seen this work happen. I'm wondering, have you had those challenges, and how do you help to, mitigate those challenges?
Yeah, that's the beautiful struggle. And Oakland was no different. I mean, I think it actually may be because of the extraordinary diversity, and then almost this race politics in the sense of the dynamic was equally complex in Oakland. Let me just share that. I think what I, in the first phase, and this is what I would offer to you all in the next several months, how we engage the community and lead with data. And so for me, I didn't lead saying African-American, we're going to focus on that. What I did was we did data walks in the hills, in the flatlands, in the East and in the West, in front of all white audiences, in front of all Black audiences, in front of Chicano indigenous audiences. But what we did was we looked, and so we had the 7 goal areas. And so I'm not sure what those specific goal areas would be in Kent, but we would disaggregate the data by race and gender, if you want to go there too, and by zip code, if you want, and just post in walls. And you can do this virtually as well, a little bit more complex, but basically allowing people to, for themselves, see who's thriving based on the data and then who's struggling. So that's important, because then what we did was have the community share to us, there's some inequity that we're seeing. And those in Oakland, those who were furthest from opportunity were African-American males. Holistically, 15-year difference in life expectancy, significant differences in graduation rates, literacy rates, chronic absenteeism, referral to special ed. But as opposed to me coming in and saying, we're going to focus on Black boys, what we did was kind of disguise the vegetables and let the community say, wow, so it was just another way to build to get people to see that what's happening with Black children in this city is egregious. And so that was one, while simultaneously, well, what are we going to do about it? And then beginning to empower, because if it's just a Black people problem, it's going to live and die with that. This is all, as Kent, if the data suggests that Black boys are furthest from opportunity, that is an issue for Kent. And so how do we build the will of Kent to see, what does our collective do different to bring? And so, and I didn't have this slide, and which I'll go to, but how we brought them into center. The other piece was around our values and principles. And so what drove our work was a few things. Our design principles were a few things. One, you design on the margin. And so the data told us who was on the margin. It was Black children. And so I just say this to say, and even 10 years in, you still have folk who are saying, but we built enough will and shared understanding for allies, Black, white, male, female, or other, to begin to understand, wow, we do need to do something different. And that's, Director Daniels, how we actually really had African-American male achievement live beyond 5 superintendents, several chief academic officers, and through state legislation, the federal legislation, because remember, we ran off state standards, and then under ESSA, we now went to federal legislation. So in this complexity and dynamicism, and it became the movement of Oakland was like, no, we need to do something fundamentally different for Black children. And it was powerful to have white allies say that, Latino allies, indigenous, and what we did was, it was really the data that we just continued to lead with. But I want to be clear, we never had 100% buy-in, but it was enough to, and so for us, it was critical mass. Like if you can get enough of the folk to make the main thing and see it, you actually can get that kind of movement. And what the data ended up showing was not only the Black children benefit, all children benefited. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chapman, I'd like to take you in a different direction here. Because I've done a lot of work with youth and kids, and that's been a passion of mine, I would like you to kind of walk through it with me. How do you capture young people to get engaged in this? I mean, is this going to be something they have to sit through in a classroom, or they come and participate because they want to? I want to know how you get their buy-in to come and talk to you.
Yeah. So we're listening. I mean, basically what drove the African curriculum wasn't me saying, oh, we need African. It was Black children saying, I don't know who I am. Like Black children thinking that their history started with slavery. And so I shared this to say, we had youth. One was a strategy. Yeah, and they ain't listening to 52-year-old men like myself. Young people are going to listen to young people more than the folks on this screen. They're going to listen to Jeremiah. So having the Jeremiahs and being like, all right, King, Jeremiah, look, we want you to get some of the homies, and we want you to begin to just listen to what would get Black children excited about coming to school. What would it look like? What would it sound like? What would it feel like? And we didn't have there were no barriers. So we empowered them to, if money wasn't an option, if there wasn't any construct, and just listen. And so they began, but we did this with multiple folk, but our young people really creating place and space where young people could talk to young people was also healing and affirming. So that was one, but also then we were encouraging at the board level, board members, when you open your board meeting, may open it with the Jeremiah, right? Closing with successes of Black children, like at every level, beginning to be open and close with positive things that were happening within the experiences of Black children. But I would say, and it was multifaceted, but one was organizing young people to speak to young people. Yeah, we kind of trained them on a protocol. So it was kind of participatory action research in terms of, if those of you familiar with that. And then it was the other landscape analysis too, of then those teachers that were doing awesome work with Black children and beginning to listen. Well, how is this, there was a white elementary school kindergarten teacher who it wasn't on anybody's radar. But if you wanted to see engaged instruction of active, squiggly wiggly Black boys, we went to this one teacher that a lot of folks just didn't know. So it's that landscape analysis of beginning to listen, like, who are those folks that are engaging Black children, and then lifting up, well, what are they doing differently? As opposed to when a Black child is excited, and they, as opposed to kind of smashing on that person would embrace that energy very differently. So we began to shine a light on, well, look what Miss Johnson, look what she's doing in this class, and to give people permission that, oh, that wasn't something happening in Oakland, that's happening right here in Kent. And so, but this is the process. So I say this to say, engaging a group of young African-American youth to listen to young folk, maybe getting some alumni to listen, to help facilitate past young folks' experiences within Kent and kind of where they're at, and then beginning to listen to other, at every level, who is demonstrating effective practices around engaged instruction for African-American children as well. That just, so hopefully that gave some sense. And then, but don't tokenize it. Like literally that drove then our African-centered curriculum. Why did we come up with recruiting, training, retaining Black male teachers? Because Black children said, I need Black male teachers in my classroom. And so what drove our ideation and prototyping, again, were the voices and experiences of Black children. So hopefully that gives a little sense of kind of, and I can go deeper within it if we had more time, but really leveraging the experiences of youth and positioning them to lead and to listen. Does that help, Director Hamada?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chapman. One other just kind of follow-up is being engaged in the community. We have a lot of faith groups that do a lot of, not any specific faith group. I know schools and churches are separate, but that is an avenue. I'm wondering if you've ever kind of tapped into to include them. I didn't see a representation of that in our stakeholders, but I'm wondering if that's an avenue that you've ever used before too.
Absolutely. It's like everybody. If you have, for me, anybody that's a resident of Oakland, I'm like, come on, because it impacts all of us. So I say that to say, yeah, our Muslim community, our Catholic, our Christian, our non-denominational, our our Jewish community stood strong. I mean, in particular, the first 3 years, and there wasn't a Black person in the audience, but embraced me and the work and were supporting because they saw the impact on multiple levels. So you picked up on another asset that we do have in our community context that we have to figure out a way to leverage. And so, yes, we did leverage our church-based community as well, in the spirit of engagement. Like, how do we engage in service of? And if there were best practices what were they doing that could help us? Because the one area to reduce referral and suspension is engaged instruction. And what we found again and again is Black children were not being engaged. So what we wanted to do in our listening campaign, again, in schools, but also in community, is where are the people engaging Black children? And we didn't have any lines of demarcation, and we wanted to learn that, right? Because all of that could influence how we showed up then in service to African-American children. So artists, another way to engage was through music, through art, through food. But it was our youth who kept pointing us. If you want to engage youth, get some food during pizza, give them pizza at lunchtime, get some music, and then just having. So it was that building trust. And then from there, like, how do we position our young people in PTA, or I don't know what it's called in Kent, but our, parent teacher association meetings at a school. It was important for PTA to elevate the voices of Black children, right? And so there are some PTAs that did that well, and some they didn't do it. So we just started lifting up those best practices. And this is different than many times. It's we focus on the problem versus the promise. And so this next several months is spending time really to differentiate all the different promising practices, even if it's just one person, it gives us hope that it's happening right here. Because again, I just go back, as someone said that last meeting, Chris ain't coming, now I know engaged instruction, but I ain't coming in to teach. We want to help you all think about who are those folks in Kent. And I'll say, as I even got earlier today, that you all have all that you need, right? It's moving from resource to resource and building will. And we have to just, even if you have one, how do we take that 1 to 2? And how do you take that 2 to 20? And so it's this other idea of building this conspiracy of care, but all of this is accelerated through authentic engagement. But every time we engage, y'all, and this is why Jeremiah being in this, we always want to lead with young people. But hopefully, again, President or Director Hamada, I appreciate you leaning in and lifting that up, because we will go as far as our young people are co-designing and co-conspiring with us. So I appreciate your question.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate that you're talking about listening and just capitalizing on the resources we already have here and the best practices. I've spent some time, Renton High School has a program that's Cry Out, and so it's 1 block over from the high school, and you know, we talk about engaging the arts, and they have all kinds of opportunity for students to engage in the arts, and they have after school supports and things like that. So I'm very familiar with that. But I know that they did the same thing. They listened first to see what was engaging and interesting for students, because, you know, that's most important to me. Jeremiah, I want to hear what you think. So is listening to our students and listening to our teachers too.
Absolutely.
You know, our Black, Indigenous people of color that are teaching in the schools and leading in our schools, you know, administrators in our schools and things like that. So that's what resonates with me. That was one of the questions you asked, that's what resonates with me, is really taking the time without rushing to listen and understand where we're succeeding and where we're making assumptions that we're doing the right thing when we might not be. So it's encouraging and heartening to me. So I just really appreciate your time. It's ironic. I told Dr. Watts that my daughter, you know, is in her 2nd year of college, and she came to me probably a couple months after I went to the June meeting, and she goes, "Have you heard of Kingmakers of Oakland?" And we're talking about it in class, and I was like, "Yes, I have." So it was interesting. It was fun to have that conversation with her. And so anyway, so that's the piece of it that I don't think I latched onto before in June when I was at the meeting, that real deep listening and understanding what we already have and the supports we have in the community and the people who are succeeding. So I really thank you for that.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Director Bettinger. With that, and I appreciate, Jeremiah, thoughts, reflections, King, on how you making meaning of this? Like, what, any questions you may have that could help us, or would love to hear what you're thinking.
Yes. So first, I just wanted to start off with Mrs. Denise Daniels, what she said earlier about the kids not being the fish, but the parents and the teachers, because they are the ones that feed us. They're the ones that nurture us and allow us to grow and go places. And if they're feeding the wrong ideas into our minds, that's what we're going to take on later into life, and that's not what we want with this program. So I definitely think we're going in the right direction, which is being able to listen to students and figure out what they enjoy, what helps them learn the most, and being able to locate those main priorities and be able to put them into function. So then it's not as much of a just, okay, we're doing this, we're learning about Black history now, you have no choice. But like, they can come, and like you said, it's about building trust, and they can come and they can listen and start to institute those ideas into their mind. So I definitely think we're headed in the right direction. And I really enjoyed the PowerPoint, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me coming from you.
Yes,
you.
I also wanted to add, I do appreciate all of the partnerships that you mentioned, that the collaborative work that you'll be doing. I think that's really important. We used to have a committee many years ago that looked at all of the celebrations that were happening around the district. That there was a conversation about centralizing the Martin Luther King Assembly, and if that was a good move on our part, or was it better to have each individual school celebrate that separately. And it was a very interesting discussion because the intent there was to kind of highlight, who is actually having an effect or an impact on our students the most, and how are we acknowledging the differences, and also our how we become unified, looking at that in a strategic way. So this sort of reminded me of that, and one of the takeaways for me was that that you'll be looking at cultural relevant curriculum in a more holistic way, and not as it's what often is described by some students is ethnic studies, and it's a very limited description, and our students have gone to our legislators and asked for more ethnic studies. And so I feel like you're going to expand that definition because you're going to look at so many other things than what is typically studied or shown in the media. And I think that's going to be the strength of this program, is that you will open up so many ways of looking at how we're not only different, but also how we can all come together as a unit. And I do think the fact that you're looking at teaching strategies and how engagement strategies are going to be very important. The one question there that always passes through my mind are, some things are not taught. And I wonder how you would be able to shift, the ways our educators think or practice this work if they're not comfortable with your strategies. How would you shift that? How would you allow them to see what others are doing in the classrooms?
Yeah, well, I would say that would be we. I'll be working, well, God willing, we'll be working with a group that Superintendent Watts has convened, and then identifying who would be those folks to do the classroom observations. I think there's going to be critics, but this is our work. So I think it's the process, right? If people understand the process, and that we're in service of all, yet it's a targeted approach, and that we on the screen are not here to call you out. Like it's an accepting process of you are at where you're at, and this is based on your strategic plan and the equity priorities, that my understanding and just reviewing where you are at, that to be a teacher in Kent, that you do value equity and excellence, right? And so, I think part of this work in disguising the vegetables is like, how are we practicing values in everything, like the Kent values? So, and not to say, Sister Maya, that this is going to change the folks that are haters, but yet I think the process of building trust does take time, and the idea of listening, what I have found is many times we're listening from a reactionary way. And so we have to learn how to listen differently, even when we don't agree, with the spirit of taking time to understand where we're at, so we can get each other to this desired purpose. And that is ensuring that the Jeremiahs are graduating college, career, and community ready. And so with that, I just think it's time. I don't have a silver bullet or magic response to, other than if we're committed to a process, if we're committed to creating the condition, then the rituals of resistance are how we show up in practice. And I think in that, what I have found is that does build trust, and it reveals then those folks who have a different agenda too, which And then, then leaders have to hold them accountable, or folks who have, who have values maybe that aren't, are consistent with the shared value of the school or the system. And so I think the piece, so it's the process that will, of building trust. I think the practices, but that I would say that's not me. That would be we and the group, not even the board, but then the other, there's the teacher group, Dr. Watts, the union group. Like, it would be my take in prepping that if, God willing, you guys approve it would be that next meeting where then we begin to roll out, all right, who are the subgroups, then the group that would be doing how would we approach in particular virtual space? Because what we're finding too, people, teachers will close doors, but a lot of times, we're doing a classroom observation. There's a formality of kind of getting in and doing classroom observations. What we're finding, the virtual space, people are a little bit more, just nervous around opening the virtual space for virtual observation. So that, and I don't have an answer for that, but I think us together can can figure out how do we mitigate that and get under why people are nervous, right? Insecure, right? And maybe the limit, maybe their role is 30 students, but they only have 5 students showing up. Or maybe the students that aren't showing up are the Black children. We have to create a place and space where people can be honest. And again, I'm just saying, that is going to take time. But if we continue to practice our values and our principles and stay true, what I have found is folks actually, you use the group to move the group. Folk move in that direction. And for those folk who don't, then leaders have to also, help mitigate that too. So again, it's the beautiful struggle. It is messy. I'm not going to sell no wolf tickets and say, we're going to, it is going to be easy. But I think if this group, has the buy-in, and that's why I welcome, welcome the constructive criticism. But we have to buy into a process, and be it us or somebody else. We got to do something, and it is a systems approach. And so we do offer a process that's intentional and unapologetic around our kings, but also as a process to engage a system. And on that level, what we found is the districts we've started, we're still working with those districts. We're getting more districts. And the other blessing is we're learning from others. I mean, the fact that we have districts now that actually can talk about the complexity around Black children, to have a learning community in a space where we can all show up and hear from board members to teachers. We can, oh, wow, you're doing that in Seattle? What are you doing in Antioch? Oh, you're doing that in Kankakee. And that has accelerated all of our learning as well. And so that's another opportunity that we're afforded. So, so it's not just me, it's actually, you're now in a community of other folk who are also equally committed and are on their learning journey around how we're building trust and how we're mitigating some of these unique challenges of, all right, how do we facilitate getting buy-in from our teachers or from our classified staff, or in communities where there are no Black children? Why are we paying attention to this? We have now a community of folk that can help us. Well, what did they do in this school district? So again, I think what I offer, or what Kingmakers offers, is a process, but it isn't foolproof. But it's a process that I'm hopeful that can help. You all that, but it would be we, not just me. I just would help facilitate.
I want to underscore one thing before we close. Appreciate everybody that's been leading in with just beautiful and honest curiosity, and then also even just leadership from King Jeremiah. And thank you also, Brother Chris, for yet again, I think another beautiful learning opportunity about our work, and then also just a relationship building and deepening opportunity that we are cultivating with these leaders in Kent. But there's always one particular point that Chris has been hitting on, that often I'm reminded of the importance of making it very explicit. Everybody on this call, I'll even say, including Brother Jeremiah, in our own respective right, we are very accomplished. We have experienced a lot professionally. We have dealt with many process improvements and continuous improvements and strat planning sessions, or, take your pick, right? And if there's one thing I want to emphasize about what this process is, it's really about inviting each and every one of you to be shifted. If it's not clear, this is going to be a unique process, should we work together, that will shift each and every one of you. No doubt we have all worked with, consultants and strat planners and outside supporters, but fundamentally Kingmaker's work rests on one single idea. And that's what Chris has been saying. Everything that you need, you have. We bring a process in to help you operationalize that. The strategy suite that we offer, that Chris has already touched on, that I won't go into, starting with listening, is about operationalizing that. The number one word that our process rests on is building your capacity. That's simply it. It does us no good because our approach fundamentally is King-centered. It does us no good. In fact, it does the Kent School District no good if once this process is over, you all don't have anything to look back to because it's on our shoulders. That's not our work. That's right. And in a really nuanced way, those of you that know me from my old, organizing days with the Roadmap Project knows that first and foremost, I'm community-centered. The beautiful part of Kingmakers of Oakland's work, while from the White House, previous administration to other districts around the country that had Oakland on speed dial around their process. Can I just get your curriculum? Can we just get a few trainings? And what, even before I joined the team, they were really consistent with was this notion of, no. This is not about, this quick fix. You have to fundamentally embrace the idea of process is the product. You have everything that you need, but how do you structurally and strategically and relationally operationalize that is really going to be what pushes you to the next level of attaining whatever goals you have for your students, your staff body, as well as your broader community. So as we go embark into this process, yes, we will have to think about data within the context of KSD academics. But again, we're talking about South King County, a place where, zooming in on at a population level, maybe a year ago, I saw an article that spoke about the blackening and browning of South King County. I think I saw something to where like the Black population in Kent writ large has increased like 30%. And if we think those trends are going to slow down, Black, brown, otherwise, we're fooling ourselves. Kent is literally on the cusp of becoming the metropolitan center of South King County, what I call the crown jewel of South King County, right? It is. So both the academic trends, the economic trends, those things matter within the context of the future of our children, right? So the listening, being sensitive around data, and then also being very clear about what does youth voice and family empowerment look like is essential. But fundamentally, this process invites you all to be shifted as collective owners of this process, not externalizing it, because again, we're not sort of the swoop in helicopter, kind of approach, but it's truly us locking arms with you all and our partners in the community and the greater stakeholders and building our capacity to shift the system and redesign it in a way that's a lot more responsive to all of our students in the Kent School District. So I wanted to just lift that particular point up as well, because I think oftentimes it can maybe be invisible, but just to reiterate, this process is about building Kent School District's capacity and not doing a quick fix or some kind of overnight, sensational, solution. We're fundamentally committed to building your capacity to achieve whatever equity goals that you've set out for yourselves. So sorry, Brother Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I need to add that point in before we shifted. I guess with that, are we back in Dr. Watts' hands?
I was going to say additional questions, any other or further wonderings from our board members or staff? Hearing none, at this time, we know that, first of all, we give thanks, of course, Jeremiah, thank you for raising your hand. I appreciate it. No need. Please.
So I just wanted to ask, when will the decision be made if we are going to continue with the Kingmakers of Oakland or not? When will the decision be made?
Thank you, Jeremiah. And so the part of the process, you have been a part of this this ongoing process. And in fact, you are now in your second session. And so what we are planning to do as a result of this meeting, obviously our board members will continue to process and prepare to make a recommendation going forward about our partnership or proposed partnership with Kingmakers. We have a meeting scheduled for a week from today. And so that meeting, there will be an opportunity for the board to share their insights and to make a recommendation going forward. So we may know sooner than later, okay? Thank you for your question. Any other feedback, questions? Hearing none, I want to say a personal and professional thank you to Kingmakers team, Chris and Anthony. It seems like we've been having conversations for years, and in fact we have in some ways. But this focused conversation is not necessarily for us, the adults who are here. It is for our students, certainly for our families, for our staff who support this work. And I could not think of a better opportunity for us to consider in embracing the success, the significance of improving outcomes for all of our students, and particularly those students who may be furthest away from educational opportunity. Given our data, both quantitative and anecdotal, we have seen where this partnership is long overdue. And I will say that I look forward to the opportunity and certainly look forward to partnering with everyone who is here, as well as those who would potentially be joining this work. So thank you again. We'll look forward to our follow-up. And as I mentioned, you may be available for the meeting just to be there. There's no need for a presentation next week. But we do have a proposed plan going forward, how we'd like to move this work forward. But until then, again, we appreciate all that you have done to this point, and in advance for what we may have the opportunity to do for our children. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chapman and
Thank you
Mr.
all.
Shoecraft. Good to see you all again. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
President Daniels.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Bye, Jeremiah. Thank you for being here.
Bye. Thank you.
See
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.